So the filling in of the Back Bay allows Boston to create a cultural landscape that is really unparalleled among American cities. You have what was initially called Arts Square, now of course Copley Square, named for a great portrait painter from Boston, that opened on July 4th, 1876 in Copley Square, roughly where the Copley Square, there's a Copley Square Hotel there now. And the Museum of Fine Arts' mission was both to show great works of art, but more importantly, to teach about art and art appreciation. In the first decade of the 20th century, it moved to Huntington Avenue, really one of the premier museums in the world. And you also have music, as Boston has musical companies. The Handel and Haydn Society formed around the time of the War of 1812. And you have a venerable musical tradition here in Boston with the opening of a Boston Music Hall, which actually still stands on Hamilton Place. But in 1867, the New England Conservatory was founded. It's one of the first schools in the country to train classical musicians. In 1869 and 72, the New England Conservatory was responsible for the Peace Jubilee concerts, which had been held actually in the Coliseum, or the Peace Pavilion, built at Copley Square. Tremendous building that could hold an orchestra of a 1,000-member orchestra and a 10,000-member chorus, in addition to, of course, the audience. And in fact, in 1869, during one of these Peace Jubilee concerts, you had an orchestra of 1,000 members, a 10,000-member chorus, and then 100 Boston firefighters in red suspenders doing the Anvil Chorus, plus an audience. An enormous building that blew down in a storm in 1872 and then was replaced by the Museum of Fine Arts. And you also have, of course, the Boston Symphony, which was really the inspiration of Henry Lee Higginson, Civil War veteran, businessman, and he had actually had his symphony first perform at the Music Hall on Hamilton Place, but then began a campaign to build a new symphony hall, which opens in 1900, one of the great music halls in the world. And Higginson created the Boston Symphony Orchestra in 1881. Joining other music societies together in this enterprise to bring classical music to Boston. At this time, Boston also had an opera company, and there was an opera house built near Symphony Hall, which sadly no longer stands. So you have Boston becoming a premier art and music center, but the art and music wasn't just for the elite. There was a real mission to make this accessible to everybody. And you can think of Boston, a place with German immigrants and Italian immigrants who also bring musical traditions, a classical musical tradition here, that makes Boston really a very important cultural center. And then, of course, on the theme of bringing this, making this accessible, we have the Boston Public Library. Initially had been created in the 1840s and opened on Mason Street. The legislature created a free, tax-supported library, the first in the country that would allow books to circulate. And the library had a very important benefactor, in addition to some others I'll mention, in Joshua Bates. Bates had grown up in Boston. He was born in Weymouth and grown up very poor. In the 1840s and 1850s, when Boston is looking to build a new sewer system, it applies for a loan, actually a bond issue from Baring Brothers, which was one of perhaps the leading banking institution in the world. They're located in London. And Joshua Bates had moved to England and become a very successful businessman, and in fact was vice president of Baring Brothers. He sees Boston's application for a bond issue to fund a sewage system. And in a bond issue like this, you need to demonstrate everything you are doing that would make a sewage system necessary, or why someone would buy bonds to support your sewage system. And in this stack of very detailed reports and very detailed plans, Mr. Bates finds that there's also a proposal to build a free public library. And Mr. Bates immediately thinks what a great benefit this will be. And so he writes a check, a personal check for $50,000 for the Boston Public Library. And the stipulation is that when the library opens, there has to be a reading room that will be open to anyone and that can seat at the same time at least 100 people. So in the grand new Boston Public Library that opens at Copley Square in the 1890s, perhaps the grandest room in the library, if not in the Commonwealth, is Bates Hall, the reading room, the barrel-vaulted, ceilinged reading room, which can seat well over 100 people who come from all walks of life. On any given day, you will see college professors and bankers, high school students, elementary school students, homeless people, all using the library. This is one of the architectural, cultural achievements of Boston, of opening this library, which has artwork inside by John Singer Sargent, Augustus St. Gaudens, Chauvin, who was perhaps the greatest muralist of the day, contributes murals. There's sadly a blank space which was supposed to house a painting by James McNeill Whistler. Unfortunately, Whistler and the trustees of the library disagreed about various things, and it never came to pass. But the Boston Public Library is one of the grand achievements here in the Back Bay. And in addition, we have other cultural amenities here that make the Back Bay and make Boston one of the world's great cultural centers.